everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today we are celebrating me reading over 400 books since I started Booktube, and I thought to celebrate, why not do this series where I review the best of the best but also the worst of the worst. And we are starting with my favorite book in each genre that isn't adult sci-fi and fantasy, because those two categories will be heavily mentioned in my top 10 best of the best. So I wanted to give a shout out to other books that I do think deserve some hype, deserve some love, even though they're not, my main stuff. So if you are looking for more recommendations, definitely keep on watching. First category is YA contemporary. Not really my main thing, definitely. However, I keep saying that there are some books that I have fallen in love with since starting Booktube. And this was one of the first books that I've read actually when I started 3 years ago now. We're approaching the 4 years actually. So pretty fun, and I have been wanting to read about it more because it deserves some hype. It was really popular back in the day, but I don't hear a lot of people mention it anymore. So I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I feel like people have very extreme reactions to their writing style because there's like way too many. And I mean a lot of metaphors in this book, and I just realized that it's like backward into this jacket. Let me fix that. I feel much better now. So in this book, you're following two twins. And what's interesting is that there is two timelines. So in the first timeline, you're following them when they are 13. Actually, you're following Noah, the boy. And they are getting along just fine, but Noah is struggling with a lot of things. And then in the present time, 3 years later, so when they are 16, you're following Jude. And they don't talk anymore, and you don't know why, and you have to, go through the book to figure out what's going on. And she's the one struggling at that time. And I didn't expect to like it nearly as much as I did. I may have had my heart broken by the end, which doesn't happen often. I feel like when I say a book really hurt my soul, it really means something. And I really ended up enjoying it. Again, just be warned, the writing style won't be for everyone, but I personally really enjoyed it. It definitely feels a little like angsty teenager, but if you're looking for really fantastic YA contemporary, I can't recommend this enough. 4 years later, I'm still talking about it, so it's good. Let's just go through all the YA in one go. YA fantasy. I don't know if I'm cheating. Some people might not even categorize this as YA, but you know what? My video, my rules. Is Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I read this as a kid. It absolutely broke my heart by the third book, and I just adored it and never reread them actually, which I don't know why, probably again because my heart was broken at the end of the third book. But I reread them, was it 2 years ago on Booktube, and wow, does it stand the test of time. I personally think this was even better as an adult because I do feel like a lot of the messages went way above my head. I feel like at the time there was a lot of controversy behind this because people were saying, the book is against God and everything, but technically it's more against organized religion. And I thought there were some interesting concept in here. Again, YA fantasy. So in that world, people have part of their soul that is kind of a demon, kind of looks a little bit like a pet, really. They can't really go far from you, your best friend, basically. And you're following Lyra, and she is a little bit of a liar, really, and she goes on an adventure to try and save the world. Let's just leave it at that, keep it vague. But yes, it's just so much more than I expected. I do have this gorgeous edition that you can find on Book Depository. I do recommend the TV show once you have read the first 2 books. And by the way, for anyone that is intrigued, I know there's a companion series. The first 2 books are out. Don't recommend them. Please pretend they don't exist because this is fantastic. The rest. So yes, if you're looking, no matter what your age is, for a new YA fantasy to read, you have to read this. This is just amazing. Now YA sci-fi, it wasn't that difficult to choose because I started reading this series pretty recently, and I can't talk about it enough. Like I can't even talk when I talk about it. So Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I had a very complicated relationship with his YA books. I had read the Reckoner series. Technically, I've read the first book and the first novella and kind of hated it. So I was really nervous to get into this one, and mind-blowing, absolutely adored it. In the first book, you're following the remnant of humanity, and they're basically constantly under attack from aliens, and they're trying to survive. And you're following a main character who's really not likable at first, but what I enjoyed is that throughout the first book, there's already so much growth, and the world is super complex. And book 2, which I did read also, which is Starsight. I keep wanting to say Starlight, that's why I'm looking. I feel like the world becomes so much bigger. Obviously, I'm not going to say much more than that, but in the first one, there's a lot of spaceship battles, which are really interesting. There's a lot of banter, kind of humor that feels a bit wide, but even as an adult, I did think they were overall really good. And in the second one, it's more like political intrigue, and you kind of learn more about the aliens, which is really, really interesting. And in a style that I really didn't expect from Brandon Sanderson. So overall, totally enjoy this series. Definitely recommend it. The first 2 books out of 4 are out, and it's fantastic. Obviously, if it's the best one out of 400, you know? Now let's go into the adult stuff. I decided to group classics, modern classics, just because why not? I read this also first year on Booktube, and it is Flowers for Algernon by Danielle Keyes. I went into it absolutely blind. I knew nothing about it except that there was a mouse in it. Literally all I knew. So you can imagine how messed up my soul was by the end of this. Did not expect to care at all about it, and I did. Essentially, your following character was called Charlie. Charlie was born with a unusually low IQ, and he is part of an experiment that basically they tested how to increase the IQ of the mouse, and then they do the same thing to him. And the book is actually told into like a journal format. So in the beginning, there's a bunch of mistakes in the writing and everything, and you can see him improve throughout the book, and I won't reveal anything by the end, but I wasn't expecting it. So if you have yet to read this book, you just need to. Honestly, it took me a little while to get into it because obviously English is not my first language. So like reading the beginning was a little bit hard, but it got so good and I got really sucked in, and I really didn't expect to have a mental breakdown by the end, but I totally did. So if you want to feel the same, definitely recommend Flowers for Algernon. It's a classic for a reason. Romance. I am not a big romance person. It's a joke on this channel that I just can't do it because I get secondhand embarrassment. And technically this book could be categorized in between romance and historical fiction, but for the sake of this video, I'm choosing it because I can. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I went into it with no expectations. I had heard a few people mention it here and there, and I actually thought it was a chick lit, which not true at all. This once again took me by surprise, and I fell in love with it so hard. I actually got it from my library. They had the option of getting the book for like 7 days, like express loan, and I read it so freaking fast. And once again, my heart was broken by the end. You're following Evelyn Hugo, who was kind of a classic old Hollywood star, and for the first time in her life, she decides to give a tell-it-all to a journalist and tell her whole life story through her 7 husbands. And for once, she will also finally reveal who her true love was, and it's very tragic, and I feel like everyone on Booktube has been talking about it ever since it came out because, wow, so freaking good. I highly recommend it. Did not expect to care at all, but I totally did. So if you're looking for a new historical fiction / romance, I feel like a lot of people would enjoy this. I definitely recommend The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I actually really hope that this is going to become a movie because I can't. I need it. Best horror book. Technically, probably should not be in category, but my justification, if you go on Goodreads and you look at the book, there is like the first top thing that most people put it in is horror. So I'll allow it. The Long Walk by Stephen King. It's probably more like a bit dystopian horror, but again, we're allowing it. This is my favorite Stephen King's book. I have had a complicated relationship with him. I did do a video where I was talking about all the books that I've read by him. Totally forgot 2 of them, but it doesn't matter. And this is by far my favorite one. For some reason, I just really connected to it and I could not put it down. It's not a really big book. My edition is like one of those tiny ones, so it's like 400 pages, but really it's probably shorter than that. You're following the main character called Ray, and Ray decides, for I don't really know what reason, to take part into the Long Walk, where 100 teenage boys decide to just walk, and the last one standing will be able to wish for anything they want. The only thing I didn't really like is that there's not a lot of detail explaining how this came about and why people do it. But that's what he decides to do. He starts walking with 100 people. You're like, okay, you know, long walk. I didn't realize how dark things were going to get, because once you stop walking, or if you're not following the right speed, you get 3 warnings and then you get shot in front of everyone. So what I really enjoyed is the fact that you can literally feel his pain, and you can just really witness his slow descent into madness throughout the whole walk, because obviously it doesn't last, 5 minutes. It lasts hours and hours, if not days. And I wasn't ready for it. My legs were literally hurting while reading this book. It's just very, very exhausting, even physically and mentally to read, but it will definitely stick with you. And if you're looking to feel a little bit like you read something messed up, definitely would recommend The Long Walk. Best mystery. You're gonna notice, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit in every category, but you know what? How is that new? I wanted to talk about this one. This is The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is kind of a murder mystery with a sci-fi twist to it. You're following a character that is, you're just really thrown into the story. The first 100 pages, you're gonna be confused a little bit. But in that book, you're following a character who has to figure out what happened to Evelyn Hardcastle. She keeps dying every night, and he doesn't know, is it a suicide, is it a murder, what's going on? He has to figure it out, and every day he wakes up in a different body in this like huge party in this house, and he doesn't know who his other bodies are, he doesn't know who is helping him, who is trying to kill him, and he just has to figure things out. I feel like I'm not explaining this very well, but it's super complicated, but I just had to figure out what was going to happen. The ending isn't perfect, but I feel like it's a very hard book to finish. I really hope the author is going to come out with like more book with that concept because it's just so interesting. So if you want to read a really fantastic mystery with a sci-fi twist to it, I would highly recommend you check out this book. Best thriller, I'm gonna name two because I suck, okay? I'm just admitting it. I couldn't choose between the two. They're by the same author, so I'm allowing it once again. By Blake Crouch, we have Recursion and Dark Matter. I loaned both of them, which is why you get the pictures. But let's start with Dark Matter. This one, you're following a 40-year-old man. He one day gets kidnapped, and when he wakes up, his wife is not his wife, his son doesn't exist, and he has no idea what's going on with his life, and he just has to try and figure things out. I don't want to give more info because I feel like it could make you want to read it, so if you want more info, I will give you some in the comment section, but I feel like it's better if you go into it as blind as possible. But there were just so many freaking twists, and I just really, really enjoyed it. If you like books that reads basically like a movie, you just can't put them down, you're just really stressed, and you just binge read the whole thing in like 5 minutes, you need to pick up his books, but that's the first one. The second one is Recursion, which is even more complicated, but in a good way. The first half, really, you're following a detective, and he's trying to figure out what's going on because people keep having like false memories, and they are really confused. People end up killing themselves because they can't remember like which life is their life, and he's trying to figure things out. And at the same time, you're following this woman who is trying to create a machine that can bring back memory to people that have like Alzheimer. And you know, again, I will not give more info. Things get very dramatic, very intense, very quickly, but I truly enjoyed it, and once again, could not put it down. So if you're looking for new thrillers to read with a sci-fi twist to them, they're definitely my favorites. I would recommend both of these. The next one is going to be the most controversial book in this category because I have been saying forever that to me, mythology counts as historical fiction. So like, just bear with me. I know it's fantasy for a lot of people, but I'm just going for it. So, Cersei by Madeline Miller. If you like retelling of myths, you need to read her books. You probably have heard of them. A lot of people did like The Song of Achilles, but this one is definitely my favorite. I actually would recommend getting it as an audiobook if possible because the narrator, her voice though, I just could listen to her like reading my grocery list and just be happy and want more. But this is definitely my favorite between the two of them. So if you want to feel very satisfied about Cersei or her like retelling her new story and everything, I definitely would recommend to check out this book. Her writing is just really beautiful, and obviously as an audiobook, I feel like you really get to experience it to like its full capacity. So if you're looking for historical fiction, kinda would recommend Cersei. For contemporary / literary fiction, you know what's coming. I feel like everyone that has read this book has either hated it with like their whole soul, or they just still feel very sad about it, and I'm definitely in that category. A Little Life. I'm still so sad about it. Did I read it last year or the year before? I just can't even remember. My soul is shattered. There you go, I said it. You're following the story of 4 friends that live in New York, and you kind of just see their whole lives really. And mainly you're following Jude, and Jude has had everything horrible happen to him. Honestly, when I say that there are like trigger warnings for literally everything you can think of, I'm not joking. You get so attached to characters. The writing is just stunning. And I could not finish this book. The last 100 pages, it took me a week to read them because I would read like 10 pages and I would put it down because I would start crying. I can't do this. I literally cannot do this to myself. So Just talking about it, I get emotional. It's just a very emotional read because of how attaching the characters are. I know most people will complain because I feel like it becomes so dramatic that people start feeling like it's torture porn, which I don't really disagree. But it's still, I needed to mention it. So these are the 10 best book in 10 different genres that aren't my main ones that I really wanted to rave about and just recommend. So if you're looking for new books to read in those categories, I highly recommend you check those out. I feel like the fact that they are part of this video, the top 10 out of 400 books that I've read, definitely is telling. Please let me know if you have read them, what you thought about them. Do you think they are worth being in this video? Be my number one. If there are other books actually that I have read that you think I should have put in this video, please feel free to just tell me in the comment section so I can be like, oh, maybe you were right or maybe you were wrong. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely give it a thumbs up. Subscribe because you don't want to miss out on the rest of the videos. And I will be putting more actually on the screen that I recommend you check out. And I shall see you in my next video very soon. Bye.